Whether you have some old seed that you're pulling out of the refrigerator or perhaps you've bought new seed, you're probably starting to go through all those seed packets and figure out which ones you need to plant and when you need to plant them. Well, for a little general guideline, you might want to think about whether they're a warm season crop or a cool season crop. And one way to kind of determine that is to decide and figure out which part of the plant you're going to harvest. If you're after the fruit, which means the plant has to flower and then produce a fruit, such as tomatoes, peppers, and sweet corn, you're often looking at a warm season crop. If you're after another part of the plant, such as the leaves with kale and lettuce, perhaps the root with potatoes, radishes, and beets, or perhaps the flower, such as on broccoli and cauliflower, then you're probably looking at a cool season crop. Now, this is just a general guideline, as there are a couple of exceptions. With green peas, for example, that is a fruit, but it is a cool season crop. And with sweet potatoes, while it is a root that we're harvesting, it is a warm season crop. Okay, so what does all of this mean once we've determined whether we're planting a warm season or a cool season crop? Well, this is the ideal time that those plants thrive out in the garden. So if we're looking at a cool season crop, we know that they do better in early spring. And several of these crops can be directly sown into the garden, which means Mother Nature will take care of all of the work to germinate those seeds. Now, there are a couple of exceptions of cool season crops that do best from transplants, such as broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage. And these are often the transplants that you start seeing in your nurseries early on with seed potatoes and onion sets. So you can buy them. But if you're wanting to grow your own broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower transplants, you want to start those about 5 to 6 weeks before you'll plant them out into the garden in mid-March. Now, if you're looking at warm season crops, there are several warm season crops that can again be directly sown out into the garden. But you're going to wait until the soil temperatures reach a consistent 50 degrees Fahrenheit at planting depth before you do that. Usually this is around mid-April. As I always say, you got to go pay your taxes before you can go play in the garden. Now, this is a general rule of the annual last freeze date in Oklahoma, and of course it can vary across the state, and you want to keep an eye on your forecast as that date approaches. But by directly sowing those warm season crops out into the garden, it does make them a little more susceptible if we do have any late freezes, because that plant is vulnerable to that. Several of the warm season crops that you can directly sow into the garden include okra, pumpkins, watermelon, southern peas, and sweet corn. Now, because Oklahoma has such a short-lived spring, there are a couple of warm season crops that you're going to plant as transplants out into the garden. A lot of times you can purchase those transplants either into late March or into April to put them out into the garden, or you can grow them yourself. So our warm season crops that we want to transplant are going to be the next seeds that we want to start thinking about getting them growing in our home or our greenhouse now. And these include tomatoes, peppers, and if you would like, summer squash. But summer squash can also be directly planted into the garden as well. And that's because tomatoes and peppers just need a little extra time to get established before we put them out in the garden. By planting these transplants, that just gives us a little extra time before the summer heat begins to crank up. Now, I know all this might sound a little complicated, so if you have certain seeds that you're really questioning about when to plant them and whether to directly sow them or to start them as transplants, always check the back of your seed pack and it'll tell you whether you need to start them early or to go ahead and directly sow those out into the garden. Also, for more information and a quick reference guide on when to start your seeds, and again, whether to start them out in the garden or ahead of time, check out this fact sheet.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.